My name is Elias Thorne, and I make things that sing. Not in a metaphorical sense, though I suppose there's poetry in it, but in a literal one. From my small workshop, nestled in the damp, green quiet of a Portland neighborhood, I shape spruce and rosewood, maple and ebony, into acoustic guitars. It's a slow, deliberate craft, one that smells of sawdust and lacquer and patience. Each piece of wood has a story, a grain, a resonance all its own. My job is to listen to it, to feel its potential with my fingertips, and to coax it into a voice that can carry a melody. My life, much like my work, has always been grounded in the tangible, in the beauty of things that are solid, honest, and built to last. My world was one of quiet chords and the steady rhythm of a hand playing. Clara's, when she entered it, was a kaleidoscope of bright, fleeting moments, each one captured, filtered, and broadcast for an unseen audience. For the first year and a half we were together, this difference was the source of a captivating harmony. I was the anchor, she was the sail. I'd spend a day wrestling a stubborn piece of koa into the curve of a guitar's body, and she would arrive home, buzzing with the energy of a downtown event, her phone filled with pictures of artfully arranged lattes and borrowed sunsets. She brought a vibrant, chaotic color to my monochrome world, and I, in turn, offered her a quiet harbor, a place where the performance could end. Then, 6 months ago, the harmony began to sour into dissonance. Clara quit her marketing job at Viridia Digital, a stable and creative position, to pursue her dream of becoming a full-time content creator. Her niche was aspirational living, a curated aesthetic of minimalist interiors, sustainable fashion, and mindful moments that, I was beginning to realize, required a very unmindful amount of spending and staging. We sat at the old oak table I'd built, the one she'd since covered with a linen cloth because its rustic finish was too busy for her photos. We made an agreement. I believed in her, or at least, I wanted to believe in the passion I saw in her eyes. I told her I would cover the mortgage and our core bills for 6 months, a trial period to give her a runway. Her savings, she promised, would be dedicated entirely to her business expenses, camera gear, web hosting, props. It felt like a reasonable investment in her happiness, a temporary bridge to the future she envisioned. Almost immediately, however, the lines began to blur. A trip to a boutique ceramicist in the Gorge was a prop acquisition. A weekend getaway to a designer cabin on the coast was location scouting. Her business expenses looked suspiciously like the life she was trying to sell, and my bank account was the silent, uncredited investor. The arrangement felt less like a partnership and more like I was the quiet, off-camera producer of her one-woman show. The shift was subtle at first, a series of minor chords that hinted at a darker progression. Little comments about how my flannel shirts weren't very on-brand. Suggestions that my workshop was too dusty to ever feature in her content. The way she'd start asking me to run errands or handle her shipping not as a request to a partner, but as a directive to an assistant. The foundation of our life, the one I thought we were building together, felt like it was being hollowed out to create a soundstage. This 3-week trip to Europe Grand Tour of Paris, Rome, and Lisbon was meant to be her final, explosive push. It was the culmination of the 6-month trial, a chance to generate enough content and secure enough brand deals to finally stand on her own 2 feet. The day she was due to leave, the persistent Portland drizzle had settled into a fine, gray mist, blurring the edges of the world. The airport incident wasn't the first sign of decay, but it was the one that brought the entire structure crashing down. I'd helped her wrestle 3 oversized, champagne-colored suitcases into the back of my old pickup. Each one was packed to the 50-pound limit, a testament to the sheer volume of outfits required to live an aspirational life. As we navigated the polished floors of PDX, the familiar teal carpet a comforting constant under my worn leather boots, I could feel her vibrating with a nervous energy. Near the check-in counter, she spotted them. Thea and Simone, her collaborators and fellow architects of digital perfection. They were a vision of travel chic, draped in cashmere wraps and wearing sunglasses indoors, their own luggage a matching set of sleek, black carry-ons. They looked from Clara to me, in my comfortable jeans and a hoodie smelling faintly of wood smoke, and I saw a flicker of something pity, or perhaps disdain pass between them. Clara stopped abruptly, her hand flying up to halt the luggage cart I was pushing. She turned to me, and her face, usually so carefully composed for the camera, was a mask of raw panic. "Okay, you can just stop here," she said, her voice a tense whisper that cut through the terminal's gentle hum. I was confused. "What do you mean? I'll walk with you to security, say a proper goodbye." A sigh escaped her lips, sharp and impatient, as if I'd suggested something utterly archaic, like writing a letter instead of sending a text. She darted a look at her friends, who were now pretending to be engrossed in their phones, then back at me. Her eyes, which I had once found so full of life, were cold and hard. "Don't walk with me," she said, the words low and sharp, each one a perfectly aimed dart. "You'll embarrass me in front of my friends." And there it was, the final, clarifying chord. In that single, brutal phrase, I understood. I was not her partner, the man she loved, the one she would miss for 3 weeks. I was a prop that didn't fit the scene, a smudge on the lens of her carefully crafted life, a potential embarrassment to be managed and kept out of frame. I glanced past her shoulder. Thea and Simone were no longer pretending. They were watching, smirking, their expressions confirming everything they had heard. In that moment, the past 2 years replayed in my mind, but the audio was finally clear. Every dismissive comment, every time I'd felt like a background character in my own home, every choice we made that prioritized the aesthetic over the authenticity, all clicked into place. The love I felt for her didn't die in a fiery explosion. It simply dissolved, like sugar in the steady Portland rain, until nothing was left. I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. A strange, hollow calm settled over me, a quiet so profound it was almost peaceful. It was the silence after a string snaps. I looked at her perfectly made-up face, the face I knew took an hour to construct each morning, and I simply nodded. "You're right," I said, my voice even and surprisingly gentle. "I wouldn't want to do that." I let go of the luggage cart. Its wheels squeaked as it settled. "Have a wonderful trip, Clara." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I could feel her standing there, stunned into silence. She had expected a fight, a scene, some drama she could later recount to her friends over brunch in Paris, edited for maximum sympathy. She got none of it. All she got was my back, growing smaller and smaller as I walked toward the doors, back into the soft, gray rain of the real world. As the automatic doors slid shut behind me, I pulled out my phone. She was going to be gone for 3 weeks. That was more than enough time. Clara was about to get the rebranding of a lifetime, and her ride home, I knew with absolute certainty, wasn't going to be me. The drive home from the airport was not the whirlwind of decisive action I might have imagined. It was quiet. The rhythmic sweep of the wipers seemed to be clearing more than just the rain from my windshield. It felt like they were clearing a fog from my mind. The petty, wounded part of me fantasized about a grand, dramatic gesture piling her perfectly curated belongings on the lawn for the neighborhood to see. But the deeper, truer part of me, the part that shaped wood and respected its nature, knew this couldn't be a demolition. It had to be a careful, respectful deconstruction. I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was trying to rebuild myself. My first stop wasn't a dealership or a bank. It was a coffee shop in my neighborhood, a place with mismatched chairs and the rich, dark smell of roasting beans. I sat by the window, watching the rain bead on the glass, and I allowed myself to feel the profound sadness of it all. This wasn't a victory. It was a failure. A relationship I had invested my heart and had crumbled into dust. I mourned it, right there, with a cup of black coffee in my hands. I mourned the woman I thought Clara was, and the man I had become while trying to love her smaller, quieter, more accommodating than I'd ever intended to be. When I finally got home, the house felt like a museum of a life that was no longer mine. Her presence was everywhere, a ghost in the machine of our shared space. Her collection of beige and cream-colored books, bought for their aesthetic rather than their content, lined the shelves. Her minimalist white couch, a piece of furniture that was profoundly uncomfortable to actually sit on, dominated the living room. And the spare bedroom, once a guest room, had been transformed into her content studio, a sterile white box filled with ring lights, tripods, and rolling racks of clothing, most with the tags still on. It was a monument to an illusion, and I could no longer live inside it. It was time to make space. Not just physically, but spiritually. I didn't want to erase her in anger. I wanted to reclaim the space for the life I wanted to live. I called a local service called Second Chance Movers, a company that specialized in helping people with difficult life transitions. They didn't just haul things away. They sorted, packed, and helped donate usable items to women's shelters and community programs. I spoke to a kind woman named Maria. "I need to clear a space," I explained, my voice feeling rusty. My ex-partner's things. I want them treated with respect, but I need them gone. I want to turn my house back into a home." Maria understood immediately. She didn't ask for sordid details. She simply quoted me a fair price and promised her team would be there the next morning. "We'll help you find the quiet again," she said. While they worked the next day, a team of two compassionate and efficient women who moved with a gentle purpose, I focused on the digital architecture of our life. It felt less like revenge and more like a necessary untangling. I logged into the streaming accounts and changed the passwords, not out of spite, but because watching a movie on the couch was an intimacy we no longer shared. I removed her name from my credit card accounts, a simple, administrative act that felt like drawing a final, necessary boundary. Her business website was the last piece. I had the login credentials, stored in a shared document from when I'd helped her with a technical issue. I didn't deface it or change it. That was her creation, her dream. To destroy it would be to adopt the very cruelty I was trying to escape. Instead, I simply downloaded a full backup of the site and all its content onto a hard drive. Then I changed the contact email to hers and removed my own, severing my last administrative tie to her brand. The site was hers, to do with as she pleased. My involvement was over. By the next evening, the transformation of the house was breathtaking. It was empty, clean, and filled with a profound, resonant silence. The Second Chance team had been incredible. Her clothes, her props, her furniture, all of it was gone. The usable items were on their way to new homes where they might be needed, and the rest was packed neatly into a storage unit, the first month's rent paid by me as a final, quiet gesture of closure. The spare bedroom, once a chaotic temple to her online persona, was now just a room, for empty walls holding nothing but possibility. An empty house, however, is not a home. So, I began the slow, joyful process of filling it with myself again. I drove to my parents' house and retrieved the furniture I had put into their garage. The solid oak coffee table I'd built years ago, its surface scarred with the history of late-night conversations and spilled coffee. The deep, comfortable leather armchair that molded to your body, a piece Clara had despised as too masculine. I brought them back and placed them in the living room, and the house immediately started to feel like it could breathe again. I spent the next 2 weeks reclaiming my life, one small, authentic act at a time. I called my friend Sam, a musician I hadn't seen in months because our jam sessions were too noisy and not very photogenic. We spent a whole Saturday in my workshop, me sanding down the fretboard of a new guitar, him picking out blues riffs on his old Telecaster. The air filled with the smell of sawdust and the sound of honest, imperfect music. It was wonderful. I went for a long, muddy hike in the Columbia River Gorge, letting the mist settle on my face, feeling the burn in my lungs. I didn't take a single picture. The memory of the green, the wet earth, and the thunder of the waterfall was enough. It was for me, and me alone. I received a few texts from Clara during that time. They were like postcards from another reality. A perfectly framed shot of her smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower, a close-up of a gelato in Rome, a sun-drenched selfie from a beach in Lisbon. The captions were breezy and impersonal. She never once asked how I was. She was performing her life, and I was simply part of the audience she assumed was watching. I never replied. Silence, I was learning, was a powerful form of communication. The final piece of my own quiet plan fell into place a few days before she was scheduled to return. The old pickup truck she'd found so embarrassing was also the one that could haul lumber and navigate Forest Service roads. It was mine, in every sense of the word. But there was another vehicle, a sleek, modern sedan we'd bought together for her to use. It was practical and photogenic, and though we bought it jointly, I had made every single payment. I drove it to the dealership and sold it, taking a small loss that felt like a massive gain. I took the check, endorsed it, and donated the entire amount to a local charity that provides musical instruments to underprivileged kids in Portland schools. It felt right, turning a symbol of our broken life into a source of future harmony for someone else. The day before her flight was due to land, I sat at my old oak table and composed a single email. The subject line was simple: regarding your return. The email was short and factual, written not with anger, but with a clear, calm finality. Clara, I hope you had a productive and successful trip. Based on our last conversation at the airport, I've come to understand that we want fundamentally different things in life, and I've taken some steps to honor the separation you requested. Your belongings have been carefully packed. The items you can use have been donated, as I felt you would wish, and the rest have been placed in a secure storage facility. The address is Storage Facility Address, Unit 218. The access code is code. The first month is prepaid to give you time to make arrangements. The sedan has been sold, and our joint account for it has been closed. I have also had the locks on the house changed. This space is no longer a home we share. This was a difficult decision, but I believe it is the necessary one for both of us to move forward. I am leaving town for a while to clear my head. I'll be on the coast, and will have limited reception. I wish you nothing but the best in your future. Elias. I hit send. Then I shut down my computer, loaded a backpack and my favorite guitar into my truck, and drove west, toward the roar of the ocean. She had wanted to be the star of her own show. I had just dismantled the set, turned off the stage lights, and walked out of the theater. All that was left for her was an empty stage. I was somewhere on the Oregon coast, near a small town called Manzanita, when I finally turned my phone back on. It had been 5 days of walking on windswept beaches, watching the Pacific churn under moody skies, and playing my guitar to an audience of seagulls and crashing waves. The digital silence had been a balm. The onslaught that greeted me when my phone connected to a signal was as jarring as a fire alarm in a library. Dozens of missed calls. A string of increasingly frantic and furious texts from Clara. Messages from her friends, Thea and Simone, filled with feigned concern and thinly veiled accusations. And a long, detailed voicemail from my friend Sam, who had agreed to be my eyes and ears on the ground. Listening to his message, I sat on a piece of driftwood, the salty air cool on my face. He wasn't gloating. He sounded worried, but also grimly satisfied, like a man who has seen his predictions come true. Clara's flight had landed on time. She had apparently waited at the arrivals curb for over an hour, scrolling through her phone, becoming more and more agitated as the minutes ticked by. Sam, who heard the story from a neighbor, said she eventually had a full-blown tantrum, right there on the sidewalk, cursing into her phone. She finally hailed a cab for the expensive, hour-long ride back to my house. The moment of truth, as Sam described it, was cinematic in its quiet devastation. The cab driver helped her unload the 3 massive suitcases onto the porch. She paid him, he drove away, and she turned, key in hand, to open the front door. The sight of her key failing to turn in the new lock, the small, sharp sound of metal hitting an impassable barrier, was the point where her curated world collided with an uneditable reality. She was stranded on the porch of a life she could no longer access, surrounded by the baggage of a career built on illusion. Her first calls, of course, were to me. Then, to her friends. Thea and Simone, who had been her glamorous European travel companions, were suddenly and completely unavailable. They lived in small, stylish apartments downtown with no storage space, and certainly no room for a friend in the midst of a personal crisis that was far too messy for Instagram. In the end, she had to call her parents, who lived 2 hours away in Salem. Sam said the scene on my front lawn, as witnessed by several neighbors, was pure chaos. Her father, a stern, practical man I'd always liked, was yelling about irresponsibility. Her mother was weeping, and Clara just sat on one of her champagne-colored suitcases, staring at the front door of the house that had once been her backdrop, now a symbol of her displacement. The online fallout began that night. It wasn't the coordinated, strategic attack of the original story's villain, but something sadder and more desperate. Clara posted a long, rambling story to her Instagram, a tearful, filter-heavy video about betrayal and the hidden struggles of a creative life. She painted me as a cold, cruel monster who had thrown her out without warning. Thea and Simone reposted it with supportive emojis, but the narrative didn't stick. Before I left, I had sent a short, quiet text to a few close mutual friends. Clara and I have separated, it read. It's been a difficult time. I'd appreciate it if you'd reserve judgment. There's more to the story. It was enough. My friends, people who knew my character, were skeptical of her dramatic portrayal. And somehow, the story of what she had said to me at the airport began to circulate. The carefully constructed image of a blameless victim began to crack. The legal threats arrived a week later, not from a fancy law firm, but in a blustering email from her father. It demanded I grant her access to the house and provide financial support for the career I had sabotaged. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend who drafted a calm, factual response. It included a copy of the deed to the house, solely in my name from before I ever met Clara. It included bank statements showing I had paid the mortgage and all utilities for the past 2 years. And it included a gentle but firm refusal to engage in financial disputes, along with a copy of the receipt from the storage unit, a clear indication that I had handled her property with care. The email concluded with a sincere wish for Clara's well-being. There was no reply. The social media post stopped. All that was left was the vast, peaceful silence of the Pacific Ocean. It's been about 4 months since I got back from the coast. The silence has been the most beautiful gift. My house is my own again. It feels solid, real. The air smells of wood, coffee, and the damp Portland earth. It's filled with the music I make, the books I read, and the comfortable presence of friends who don't need me to be anyone but myself. The story of Clara's return and the quiet implosion of her online life became a sort of cautionary tale among our old circle. She moved back in with her parents in Salem. Her influencer career, built on a lifestyle she couldn't sustain without a benefactor, has withered. Without the aspirational backdrop of my house, the trips, the designer goods, she had no content. Her feed is now a ghost town of old photos and vague, melancholic quotes about resilience and new beginnings. I heard through Sam that her friendship with Thea and Simone dissolved in a series of bitter arguments over money. Theirs, it turned out, was a friendship of mutual brand building, as transactional as her relationship with me had become. I had one final, indirect interaction with her world. About a month ago, I received an email from the charity I donated the car money to. It was a picture of a young girl, maybe 10 years old, holding a brand new cello, her face radiating a joy so pure and unself-conscious it took my breath away. The director of the program wrote, "Your donation made this possible. You've given a gift of a lifetime." I printed the picture and pinned it to the wall in my workshop. It's a reminder that sometimes, an ending can be the source of a beautiful new beginning. Clara saw me as an accessory, a silent producer, a foundation that was supposed to be invisible so she could shine. She never understood that the foundation is everything. And when you treat the foundation with contempt, the whole pretty, hollow structure you've built on top of it is bound to come crashing down. I'm not angry anymore. I feel a quiet, lingering sadness for the woman she could have been if she hadn't gotten lost in the reflection on a screen. But mostly, I just feel free. I'm working on a new guitar now, made from a beautiful piece of myrtle wood sourced from the Oregon coast. The wood is complex, its grains swirling with different colors and patterns. It's not perfect in a sterile, minimalist way. It's perfect in its authenticity. As I work, I'm planning another trip for the fall, maybe up to the San Juan Islands, to just sit and watch the whales. Clara wanted a life that looked perfect online. I just wanted a life that felt good in reality. I now know, with the certainty of a luthier who knows his wood, that you cannot build one on the hollow frame of the other. She made her choice at the airport that day. She chose the image over the person. In the end, the image was all she had left, a blurry, fading picture of a life that was never really hers to begin with. And I have this, the weight of a real tool in my hand, the promise of a true note from a new string, and the quiet, solid peace of my own life.